Okay, so I'm live today here in the lovely home of Jack West and his brother Rod, and today we're going to talk about the West family, their long history in this town, and we're going to talk specifically about their musical background. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, your family has a long history in Newmarket.
Yes.
I think you told me that your grandfather was the mayor at one time.
Yes, it was. So that's John Nesbitt. He had an implement shop on Main Street, but also sold cars. Maybe the first GM cars in Newmarket.
Was he the gentleman who had the first gas station? I
Yes.
think it was a gas station.
Right on Main Street.
Yeah, Main Street.
Right where Times Square is now. So the ceiling's still the same, as it was back then, the 30s and 40s.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's interesting. And how long was he the mayor?
At least, he was up at least twice.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the 30s, something like that.
Yes, yes.
Maybe in the early 40s.
No,
No.
I think it was in the 30s.
Okay.
I think actually his first short spell as mayor was in the late 20s, and then he came back
Oh,
a
okay.
little bit later in the early 30s.
Okay.
Interesting. But I guess most people know the West family for music. Your father had a band, and during, I guess, what, the 30s and 40s? Did it stretch into the 50s?
He started in the 20s.
We started in the 20s.
Yeah, they had a band in 21, maybe 1921. Went on for a good 50 years.
My gosh. And he was a town employee as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Art West and his orchestra.
Art West and his orchestra.
The Art West Orchestra. They played a lot of local dances, and not only in Newmarket, but the surrounding countryside.
Well, I know in doing interviews with people, they often mention the Art West band, and they talk about going to Musselman's Lake, and, you know. So,
Schaumburg.
You know, Schaumburg. Well, so he was famous. So I guess
The Lake Simcoe.
Lake Simcoe?
Different spots up there.
Boy, he was famous.
I remember actually playing with him once, a barn dance in Church Hill, which is a little community on north of Bradford on Highway 11. So they did all kinds of dances, square dances, round dances, of course, too. The whole bit.
Very flexible.
Yeah.
And what do you think it was a good living? I'm going to get to you and whether what you think about the money that you can make in music, but do you think it was a good living for him?
I think so, especially in the Depression. A lot of people still danced because they didn't have TVs and stuff. So people like to get to a dance and stuff. They were often playing, Jack, I think you might remember, we would see from Dad's diary, 5 or 6 nights a week.
My gosh.
Different places, yeah. So it was financially a good thing because money was hard to get back in those days.
Yeah. I don't know how he ever did it.
Well,
You know?
his family all went into music too. I guess all of you went into music in some way.
I'd say some of us. Like,
Yeah, right. Myself, Jack, Buddy were the horn players. Linda was the piano player. And I think Roseanne took lessons too.
yeah.
I'm not sure about Pat or Maureen, but they had other interests.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we all got involved.
So that must have been wonderful. You know, you had a father that was musical. Was your grandfather musical?
He liked music.
He loved music.
Yeah.
I don't know if he played.
Mm-hmm.
I
No.
recall every Sunday after church, we pile in the car, we bring our grandfather along with us back to our house on Millard Avenue. My dad we'd have a breakfast, whatever, and then my dad would sit down at the piano, and my mother would often sing along with some of those tunes, and our grandfather, he'd sit in his chair. he was having a bit of a hard time with his physical condition, so he loved to sit, sipping on a nice bottle or a glass of rye water, whatever, ginger, and watch all the there were 7 of us actually, over the years, 7 kids, but we would march around through the house to the tunes that my dad played on the piano. And then, as we got a bit older, I learned to play the cornet, trumpet, Jack on the drums, Buddy on the trombone. We would accompany my father with all these tunes that he knew and played. And so we learned a lot of standard tunes, so-called.
And the grandfather would give out the silver dimes.
That's right.
That's been marched every
kid.
week.
Yep.
So that's every week 7 dimes. He kept collecting.
Wow.
That went towards the turkey and Christmas time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so, and you're both still involved in music. I know you taught music, and of course you were a musician, and you're still a musician.
Still playing, still trying to get it right, Rick.
Well, persistence, they say, is very important to become great.
Yeah.
So, would you say that, as far as your music background, would you say that this was a great way to meet people? There's a lot of musicians. I've interviewed people who referred to a lot of musicians that we had around Newmarket at the time. Of course, the Max Bogue band was also around at that time, and he employed a lot of local people as well. So,
yeah. This guy
Newmarket
was in
very...
the Max Bogue band in the 40s.
Yeah,
in the
I got my first job ever playing in a dance band at Max's Club 14, which was a kind of a nightclub for Newmarket. During the war years, when the guys were at the camp, and of course there were a lot of young ladies too from the area who would go to these dances and meet these young fellows. But Max put on a great orchestra. He had all the best equipment and stuff that you could buy, that you could ask for. Yes, Isha Goodman was one of the piano players. He had almost had become a concert pianist, and then I don't know. He discovered this other kind of music, and he put on a show that really
Top of the line.
top of the line.
Almost like Liberace. Incredible.
Yeah, that's right. He was like
What's that one he played so much with you guys, right?
Bumble Boogie.
Oh, yeah.
Kumada was another one, and the people would just crowd up around the stage to see him play, and listen to him play.
I don't think most people who either grew up in Newmarket or are new to Newmarket, I don't think they realize the musical history that we have in this town.
Yes.
I know, doing the interviews that I've been doing over the last few years, I noticed that that's something that everybody refers to as the great music that came out of Newmarket.
Yeah.
So that Club 14 must have been quite the place. I know my mother talked about Club 14 during the war.
Did she?
It's a happening place.
Right. The building's still there. I think it's on Millard Avenue, near the corner of Raglan there.
Yeah, Millard, yeah.
It's a Masonic Hall, I believe. It's now the Masonic Hall.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
I thought that was next door, but anyway, it's right there. Whatever.
According to the ads,
Oh.
it looks a lot like the Masonic Hall.
Okay.
Quite a transformation from dance hall to Masonic Hall. So,
Right.
the other thing that always interests me, I think, about the whole concept of the whole family being involved in music, or virtually the whole family being involved in music, is you must have been able to put together a pretty good band yourself. With you said 4 of you or 3 of you were on horns, and you had a piano player, and
Yeah.
you had a vocalist. You didn't really need to go outside the family to.
At times, no. Could easily do that. We didn't do a lot of it, but we were in different. Well, you were with different groups. I was with different groups.
I recall a couple of times our band that family band did play.
Yeah.
Once a New Year's job up at Sharon,
Yeah.
and another time at a wedding. Sally Bryce's
Oh, gosh, yes.
wedding. And
Yeah.
that was the time when the Tijuana Brass were really popular. That'd be the late 60s or so. So there we were playing a lot of these Herb Alpert tunes at,
Oh, that was amazing.
at the wedding, amongst other things, of course. But Howard Bryce, young Buddy Bryce, was one of our great fans too. He enjoyed that music. Yeah.
Well, it's great that you were able to constantly be updating your repertoire. I know you said that your father had an incredible catalog
Yes.
of music.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, around 2,200 folders or arrangements. And it was in a mess a bit for a while, but we sorted that out. Put it all back together. And I guess you had the commercial department fix it up on alphabetical and by numbers. So, yeah, it was really well organized in the end. Took up a whole wall in our rec room and shelved.
And a sort of a side event of that, often he would go down to the Toronto to a certain music store, and there would be a young lady play all the brand new tunes of the day, and her name was Ruth Lowell. She was a beautiful player, young lady, and of course she became very famous because later she composed some tunes, and Frank Sinatra made records of them. And one of them was "Put Your Dreams Away for Another Day," which was often his closing number, and then another one, "I'll Never Smile Again," which is probably the most famous one that she ever did. But
Yeah.
She not only played them well, she wrote some really beautiful material. Anyway, that's how the band leaders of the day would go down and hear what was coming along from the composers.
So, what other famous people have you worked with?
How about that trombone player? Great stories.
Alice Surratt, one of the, and probably not a name known as well as she should have been. One of the great musicians we ever knew, Alice Surratt. We lived in the Aurora area, Ajax,
Yeah.
I think, and she played with
That
Ida
famous-
Ray Hutton.
That's the one.
And
Yeah, that
also-
was around the world.
Yeah, and then later Joan Fairfax
Oh.
had a Canadian
Oh.
all-girl orchestra. But
she came and played with us at the Greystone, especially if you
yeah,
went there.
yeah, great
Outstanding.
player.
I mean, you could just, she radiated out, the sound was amazing.
And I played with the Toronto Symphony
Did you?
just for the opening of Roy Thompson Hall.
Oh, okay.
They needed some extra players, to play a certain special tune. So that's about as highfalutin as I ever got.
That was on those long trumpets. Harold trumpets.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
That was a big opening.
So that was my biggest sort of name in that regard.
Good.
Did you get an opportunity, since you're so interested in music, did you get an opportunity to see any of the greats of music?
Oh boy.
Give
We
us an
got this-
idea of some of the.
Oh, Stan Kenton. We spent a week with him at York University learning jazz. We were both down there for the clinics. We got to know him fairly well, and we went to interview him.
Jack did a great interview with Stan Kenton
Yeah, it was
on
amazing.
tape, on video.
Yeah, I was doing a
You still got
television
it?
course. Yes.
You still
yes.
have to.
Yeah, that was amazing.
We should broadcast that.
I think it should be,
Yes, we should
because
broadcast
it's
that.
really informative.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Stan treated Jack just
Yeah.
as an equal, answered all the questions, and he had some good questions for him, I'll tell you. He put him on the spot.
Yeah. So we saw Count Basie a lot. We saw Woody Herman, Gene Krupa. I brought him over for a drink one night. Henry Cuesta, we got to know him in ballad.
And remember how about Frank Sinatra?
Oh,
We saw Frank a few times.
Yeah.
Jack saw him. Whereabouts did you see him, Jack? Las Vegas?
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City?
Yeah, but at the Valley. Yeah. Never forget it.
That's where I saw him too.
Oh,
And my sister Maureen saw Frank at the Golden Nugget, Las Vegas.
oh,
And what a show he put on. That music to us was fabulous with the great orchestra and so on and so forth.
yeah.
Take a second and give us an idea of some of the local musicians that you played with. Maybe they weren't famous, maybe they weren't world famous, but I'm sure the people watching out there would love to hear of some of the people who are the musicians of the day in the Newmarket area.
I think of people like Don Langford
Oh, yeah.
and his brother Vic.
And Glenn.
And Glenn, of course.
Outstanding.
The whole
musicians.
family. Great musicians.
Roy Keys. Even
Roy-
though we didn't know him a
Roy
long
Keys,
time, he was
yeah.
quite amazing. Peter Ash,
Yes, Peter Ash, trombone player.
outstanding. He was in the Toronto Symphony for years. Motorcycle guy.
Yeah. Bill Gregg. Bill Gregg not only was the conductor of the Newmarket Band, but a great player, cornet player of his own right. Who else was in Dad's orchestra, Jack?
Oh.
Austin Brammer, Shorty Brammer.
Oh.
Gene McCaffrey.
Yeah,
Ernie McCaffrey.
yeah.
Great. And these guys were the greatest.
Jack Harlan.
Jack Arlett, my hero. I still play some of Jack Arlett's trumpet licks
Yeah,
Wow.
that I remembered him playing at the Club 14.
really.
Yeah. And I've been since in touch with his son, Brent. We've talked about this and so on and so forth.
Jack McCaffrey came along.
Jack McCaffrey.
I think there was a Pepiot, wasn't there?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
Jack. Pepiot,
Jack.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
piano player.
Mhm.
He
I
wasn't-
grew up with
Oh.
his son, and his son used to invite me over,
Oh.
and his father would play the piano, and I was
Okay.
being
Jack.
somebody who's not particularly musical. I was mesmerized by.
Oh,
He was
by
a
the music.
lovely player. He was ahead of her. He sort of had that modern touch too. You know, he was right with it into the jazz area more than most. Harvey Burling
oh,
comes to mind. Norm Burling.
yeah.
Well, they were all in the Newmarket Citizens Band.
That's right.
Yeah.
Norm had his own band,
That's
orchestra,
right.
I should say.
That's right.
Yeah.
The King's Band. And then Harvey, good friend of ours, he played with our bands. Great clarinet player, sax player. Oh yeah.
So many.
I know that Jack gave me a copy of the, I guess the retirement party where all these people played.
That's right.
So we'll have to broadcast that one night.
Oh, good.
Let people hear that.
Yeah.
And get a chance to hear the magic that came out of Newmarket.
That's right. That's right, because my dad's playing in that along with the Langford brothers and
Oh,
Jack
boy.
here, and
Yeah.
our brother Bud on the trombone.
Bud.
Yes.
Bill Gregg,
Bill Gregg,
Ralph Adams on drums.
Ralph Adams on drums.
Yeah, there's a lot of great people on.
Great memories, Rick, of our musical friends.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them no longer with us. Waiting for us when we all get up there to get back together.
Yeah, to create another great band.
But I'm sure they're up there right now having a great old time.
Well, probably keeping in practice for you.
There you go.
So tell me a little bit about the Newmarket when you were growing up. You know, reminisce a little bit for us about Newmarket when you were growing up.
Well, it was a lot smaller.
What would the population be, say, when you were a teenager? What would the population of Newmarket be?
Okay, teenager, maybe 6,000
That's about
or so,
right.
right?
Yeah.
6,000?
Yeah.
I would guess.
Yeah.
We went
Small
to
town.
St. John's School. We noticed this. Being a kind of a Protestant town, mostly. We could sort of feel, I think, we were kind of the minority, and there was the odd little disagreement on the way home from school when we run into some of our people, people from the other schools, but
5 public elementary, 1 Catholic.
So you were kind of outnumbered.
we were outnumbered, that's right. But there was one night of the year where we sort of got a little bit more even with them. That was a Tom Kirk night.
Mm.
And that's when they had all the big competitions for the hockey supremacy of all the elementary schools in town. And there'd be races, skating races, of the different ages. And that was an amazing night, something we all looked forward to because the rivalry was just incredible. And we look back, I look back fondly on those days of Tom Kirk night. Tom Kirk, he was a police officer back in the day. It was named after him.
One of the first he was, I think.
I
One
know
of the first
one-
full-time, anyway.
One of the vintage video evenings that we did, we sort of looked at the whole concept of the rivalry between the Protestants and the Catholics, going right back, I guess, to the mid 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people it was very surprising that
Yes.
that we had that sort of history.
That's right. That is right.
And we didn't know some of that ourselves.
No, we weren't that aware, but at the time it was sort of normal for the we kids growing up. But we learned later things,
Well,
And I know this end of town in the early days was sort of reserved for a lot of the Irish people who would come over.
Irish Catholic, too.
Yeah, and
This
they
side
were
of
poor.
Davis Drive, north side.
Yeah, they call it Paddy Town. I guess you've heard of that, Rick. before.
Exactly. Well, the night that we did it, we talked about the fact I had found people who told me that their parents had told them that when they went to church, they lived in this area, and when they went to church, they had to wait at the corner of Davis and Main, and they would be escorted by the Orangemen
Really?
to the church.
Really?
Because in the at the turn of the century, you are not welcome to enter. Because of course, a lot of people forget that on the I guess on the north side of Davis Drive, Huron at that time, but
Yep.
Davis Drive,
Right.
that wasn't Newmarket. That was East Gwillimbury. And so when I was doing the research, when we were doing the research, we could never figure out why they kept referring to East Gwillimbury, and the reason being that they didn't consider this to be Newmarket, even though you were just across the road.
I didn't realize either till right now that was the dividing line.
That was the dividing line, and was, for a long, long time. I guess well into the 20th century.
So the Catholics would be escorted to their church from.
Well, the difficulty that you have, I think, looking back in history, is we have a tendency to look at things with a 21st century view, and things were very different. But one of the reasons why I love doing these interviews, the reason why I love history, is that I think we need to take a look at our past with all the warts and everything, and really understand what it was like. That's the reason why this is fascinating to talk about the music, because I think people don't realize the musical history we had. I did a presentation on the entertainment world, I guess you'd say, in Newmarket from the 1920s on, and in my own research I was fascinated the number of musicians that came out of a very small town, even up to, everybody knows Glass Tiger and
Yes.
this sort of thing, but even before Glass Tiger there was a duo called Gary and Dave, and Dave was from Prospect Street, and talked about getting his start at the playing at Teen Town.
Yeah. David Clayton Thomas is another one, famous, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. He played for free sometimes here.
So I mean, this is one of the exciting things. That's the reason why I was looking forward to interviewing the two of you. Is that you know, the whole background of and because your father is so well known.
Yeah. Well, see, Main Street on a Saturday night they'd have bands on each corner. Dad would have a band, I guess, you know, different bands. So the whole area was that was the central. I mean, that's how big it was. It was mainly Main Street, really. But
Was there a lot of
Saturday nights,
competition?
There's a lot of celebration there of music, and we were mainly a farmer community, so they all came in on Saturday.
Oh, so they came in for some good music.
Yeah,
I think it was a friendly competition, you know.
yeah,
And it's funny, some of the guys, well, it had changed. They all didn't have jobs the same night, so some players from other bands would be
yeah.
switched over to
Yeah, we
a
moved
different
around.
band
a bit.
later.
So it would be fair to say it was a small world. Obviously, with 6,000 people, it would be a small world. But I guess the musical scene was a small world.
Well, in a way, Ken Pondy had a band. I remember we played with that one.
That's right, Ken
So it's
Pondy.
little
That's
small
right.
bands that picked up and
Sure.
just worked at it, not heavily, but they were around too. I'd say we had more than the average for a small town.
You mentioned Teen Town. Now, a long time ago, when I was in high school, I was involved with a band called the Manhattans, and we played Teen Town for a year, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we had a lot of fun there. That's when that's just before the rock and roll came in. I guess I think our year was 54, and we had a lot of fun at Teen Town.
I'll have to sit down with you and interview you about Teen Town. That's one of the projects that as yet I haven't been able to fulfill is talking about Teen Town. Everybody, when I was growing up, Teen Town was just winding down, and but my poor cousin ended up having to take me a couple of times to Teen Town. I think I crimped her style, but I do remember, you know, how fascinated I was with, you know, and we did when I did the and this will interest you, when I did the special project on the musical scene in Newmarket. I contacted Bobby Curtola, who gave me a wonderful rendition of what he remembered about Teen Town. He remembered that the stage was so crooked that the drum kept rolling off, and but he could even remember the songs that he did when he performed here. So that was amazing. And,
Yes.
So that really excited me. So what would you say is your biggest memory from growing up in Newmarket?
Why don't you start that one?
The time I finally graduated from high school.
Ah,
It was a struggle, Rick.
it was.
Yes, the only trouble with being in music is sometimes the hours you keep. For instance, weekends we'd be up late playing at different places, and we might get back. The job would be over at 1 o'clock in the morning. We'd stop at Food Haven at Bradford there for a hot beef sandwich and the fries and the whole bit.
Yeah.
And it'd be 3 or 4 o'clock before we get home. So my mother would say, Roddy, have you got all your homework done? Have you got all those? So my grades were not good. So when I said it was a great thing when I finally graduated NHS, to me it was a big thing. It was
A
struggle.
great accomplishment.
Right, because you got to focus on your high school subjects, right? Because we all know. I had other interests. My sleep habits were not the greatest, I suppose, but it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of interesting people, and it was, including this young fella here, it was great. One of the greatest percussionists I've ever worked with, Jack. Right, he can play all the instruments, but he was incredible as a young guy.
So the
Good
Renaissance man in music.
There you are.
What?
You're the Renaissance man in
Oh,
music.
yeah, that's right.
Well, Rod really specialized and did so well with it. I'm kind of more of a general musician in a way. I didn't start till later, but I tried to catch up later on. Went on to take a lot of courses.
And you said you've retired now. You
Well,
told
for
me
the time being, yeah.
For the time being,
Yeah.
I see but you will be making a comeback.
I don't know.
You're not sure yet.
It's partly age.
Partly age, okay. So what would you say was your memory I mean, you've over the years you've told me some interesting stories, but, so I'm interested to see what it is that is your.
I didn't like high school all much. We didn't have any formal music courses. I liked industrial arts, which is creative stuff. Wasn't always wanting to do all the paperwork and stuff, which is, but there's a lot of shining lights too. Like as we moved along, things happened. Bill Elliott was a huge thing in my life. He showed me that a teacher can be a human being, and he related well with us. And he taught me how to do Shakespeare. That was amazing. That was a real breakthrough. Outstanding teacher. That's one of the highlights. What was the question you had? Highlights of?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you could think of one thing or a couple of things that you look back on and you say, this is what I remember about growing up in Newmarket.
Okay. Well, a slow start for me, but it worked out gradually, and I'm more of a journalist, and I did other things. I didn't stay with music. I moved on to other things to teach. So I took a lot of qualifications with that too. So I taught industrial arts, co-op education, religion. Yeah, I seemed to like to move around, try things at the high school level and the elementary. But then I became a consultant too, which really was neat because I liked selling. I guess that's like my granddad, really, John Nesbitt. He liked selling. He was good at doing that kind of stuff. So I worked on curriculums and stuff like that, and really enjoyed that. Taught a lot of teachers how to teach music. Yeah, so more of a general approach on it, and some high school music at Sacred Heart.
So, the future. I always ask people, what do they see as the future of Newmarket? Now, I know you no longer live in Newmarket, so maybe you've got a clearer view. But when you come back to Newmarket, having been away, a lot of the things that you saw when you were growing up are gone.
I know, but your hometown will always be your hometown, and you always have that draw to it, as you probably are aware, I reckon. It's funny though, I came along to get here today. I came along Davis Drive, 404, and I thought, am I really in Newmarket, or is this New York City? That is amazing. That's an amazing stretch of road along there.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just one part of it. That's the new part. There's the main street, which I just love, and they're doing so much good work here to make it so appealing. And we've got the beautiful lake in that area and that commons.
Yes.
They've done so many good things with this town. I can't get over it. I'm very proud of it, of where it's at now. But it's always been a great town. It's an old town, but I'm just proud to have those roots here.
I always wonder how much people know about the place that they live. This is one of the reasons why I got involved in the history, was because I thought this was a fascinating town, and I found that a lot of people didn't know anything about Newmarket. Didn't know. I remember when we did the Warriors, and I told people that Lorne Greene lived in Newmarket, lived actually on Prospect Street.
Didn't know that. Wow.
And this is where he served his time.
Wow.
And didn't know that a lot of people didn't know that he used to broadcast quite often from Newmarket, from Mr. Bogue's place.
I didn't know that.
And so,
Wow.
and I remember watching an interview, very late in his life, where he talked about the fact that a lot of the propaganda films that he did were in fact filmed here in Newmarket.
Really?
Wow.
So
I didn't know
so this
that.
is
Oh my God,
this is
that's
fascinating, and
That's
Yeah.
right.
it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it
How
is.
about you? What do you
Well,
think of Newmarket now? What do you think the future is?
It's got some core stuff that's still there. We're changing a lot. We're getting so big. I value though the fact we had a really close family. Never forget that. That was a huge thing. It was like people still remember coming over or whatever, and we always had jam sessions and fun. It was a real family thing. That was a real big draw for me. I found that was really helpful too.
Well, 7 brothers and sisters. That's a good sized family.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little traditions like Christmas, lining up upstairs. The smallest comes first, right up to the tallest that you. And you're told when to walk down the steps to come for looking over to give Christmas gifts.
Ah,
You know.
Santa's gifts.
That's
And
right.
those gifts weren't there the night before. They arrived sometime from somewhere.
Magic.
There you go.
Absolute magic.
Just like that. And I imagine my Aunt Ida had them in her place, I'm not sure. But we had a really close family. That really was a big deal.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
because of the times that you grew up in, would you say that you were well off? Would you say that you were like everybody else? Were things tough? I think as a kid you don't realize
No, you don't.
these things. You just think everybody's
Yeah.
the same anyway,
Yeah.
which essentially probably are. But
I think for a while, we didn't realize it, but I think it it's hard to get enough food for 9 or 10 people, because not only did we have our 7 kids, but we had my father's uncle staying with us for a while. So it's, we were not overfed, let's put it that way, but I think we had
We're lucky to have good meals.
the essentials.
Yeah, we
And
had
our
the
mother
essentials.
worked so hard,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's as I've been doing this, I interview a lot of people who are in their 70s and 80s, and they talk warmly of their parents,
Yeah.
realizing what the sacrifices that their parents made.
yes.
I bet you if we had interviewed them, 40 years ago, they probably would maybe not be quite as grateful. But over the years, I think you realize not only how wonderful your parents were, but how wonderful it was to grow up where you grew up.
Yeah.
True enough.
Well, we should probably wrap this up. I thank you very much. I'd like to ask that maybe at another time we can sit and talk about another topic. I'd love to talk to you about Teen Town, which is a real interest of mine. And but thank you very much for joining us.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Take care.
Good.
Bye.
There's so many things.
Fine with this. They will immediately respond.
Oh, who will?
The world.
Oh my God. Rick, you didn't tell us